Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call the regular council meeting for Monday, May 11th to order. Before I start, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we're gathered here on the traditional lands of the Lekwungen-speaking people, represented today by the Setsum and Songhees nations. We're grateful to work, play, and live in this special place. Item 2 is approval of agenda. I want to make one change to the agenda tonight. I'm going to add item 9.0 to the agenda, which is a very quick in-camera agenda. It's a couple items. May I have a mover and seconder to adopt today's amended agenda? Thank you, Councillor Jordison and Councillor Grove. Any discussion? Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. I just want to do a quick mayor's message here. I had posted something from the city of Colwood on Facebook, my very first post on Facebook. Actually, someone else did it for me. Before we move into our agenda this evening, I just want to express our profound sadness and shock that we learned the sudden passing of our councillor Lillian Spock from the city of Langford. On behalf of the City of Colwood Council and our entire community, I extend my deepest condolences to the Spock family, friends, colleagues, and the residents of Langford, who she served with dedication and compassion. Lillian was a respected person who cared deeply about her community and the people within it. Those who worked alongside her knew her as a thoughtful, pleasant, and committed to making positive difference in her city. Her passing is a tremendous loss, not only for Colwood, but for the entire West Shore community. She served over 20 years as a councillor in the city of Langford. Our thoughts and sympathies are for her loved ones and with all those grieving this heartbreaking loss. Moving on to item 4, may I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation for adoption? Thank you very much. Councillor Olson and Councillor Grove. Yes, Councillor Day.
I'd just like to request council's permission if I could possibly leave after 8.1 on the agenda.
I know exactly what it's for. So absolutely. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none. Are any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 5.0 is public participation. We have 2 written submissions that were received prior to the agenda publication, and they are attached to the agenda. And we had 8 written submissions that were received after agenda publication, and they will be appended to the agenda after tonight's meeting. In addition, they will be available on the city's meeting website tomorrow. I'd like to thank the public for their written submissions. And I will acknowledge right now, basically the ones that were submitted after 12 noon today, I just did not get a chance to even look at them. So it's, if you want us to make sure that we read your submissions before council meeting, I just want to ask the public if you can get them in before then, because it's very difficult because we're prepping for our council meetings in the evening. On that note, I just, no members from the public have registered to speak virtually. And at this time, I just want to welcome members from the public to present your concerns or ask questions of council. Alternately, you may wish to wait for the agenda item to be brought up and speak at that time on the agenda. Could I see a show of hands, the people that wish to speak at the public participation this evening? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And would you do it now, or are you going to wait for the agenda item to come available on the agenda? Okay. Everybody else is okay with doing it now then? Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. At this, and when you come up to the podium, just so that there's a lot of new faces here, so that you understand how it works here. There's a button on the mic here, and you get time for 2 minutes. It shows green, and when you have 30 seconds left, there's a little light on that podium that turns yellow. You get 30 seconds left, and when it's red, you have to cut out at that point in time. And so, and if you want responses to your questions, just grab a business card that's right on the podium there. And if you send your questions in, we will answer them. We'll send it to the right department and we will absolutely answer them. Okay, at this point in time, I will ask members of the public to come up and speak. If you just identify who you are and your address. Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm nervous. Dennis and Kathy Sadowski, and we're at 511 Bunker Road. I wrote this down just so I could get everything out clearly. We've been residents on Bunker Road since 1985, raised our son and daughter here. They attended Wishart, Dunsmuir, Belmont schools, and now luckily they are raising their families in the community. Traffic was a lot less, of course, then, and now with Colwood expanding at a rapid rate, these past few years, safety on the roads, sidewalks has changed too. The reason I felt the need to address council today is the safety factor at Wishart and Latoria intersection. I understand the Latoria infrastructure upgrade starts today, and I don't know if that includes traffic lights, but I did want to make a couple of quick points. In the mornings, we drive our grandson to preschool and pick up in the afternoons, and we have to make that left turn on Latoria. It's pretty crazy. Many days, we also pick up our granddaughter who attends Royal Bay High School, or even worse, she walks to our home along with all the other students without the sidewalk. I understand this is in the works, but as Royal Bay celebrates its 10th year, we feel completion of proper sidewalks should be a priority and look forward to the completion of this job, especially as the city is moving fast forward with the extremely high density developments at the 3 sites just down the road. I have personally witnessed very recently, which really shook us, a very close call where a Royal Bay High School student was very nearly struck in the intersection. A car speeding on Latoria blitzed through the traffic flashing lights, and he jumped back and he would have been hit. Yeah.
If I could get you, I'll give you just a wrap. If you could just
Yeah.
wrap it up, please. Thank you.
Yeah, we're just wondering what that timeline might be for lights or something to be done at that intersection.
Absolutely. Take a card. We can answer those questions, actually. They're pretty
Yeah,
easy. Thank you.
Many thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you. Next, please.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. My name is Colin Sparks, 1035 Liberty Drive, and I represent the riding of Colwood-Esquimalt at our Youth Parliament of the province, and I also serve on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee for this city. So members of the gallery, staff, council, your worship, I come here to speak on behalf of a bit of my motion that I was passed with unanimous support, if memory serves correct, from the committee. Well, I'm not going to go into huge depths on that. Hopefully you had the time to be able to read through my report, but I'll speak a little bit about it. We have a lot of people in our community who are hard of sight, particularly in our senior demographic, which is growing at a significant pace out of compared to many other demographics. It's even considered in the next coming decades, it's going to be even maybe 110% increase in the people who are above 75 years in age. And hard of sight significantly impacts movement and navigation around our city, which is completely impairing our ability to enjoy our city and independence of our fastest growing demographic. If this motion passes, it completely aligns with many of Colwood's strategic objectives, whether it's the OCP, the transportation master plans, and our age-friendly community plan. While it may feel like low-hanging fruit in the grand scheme of things, where they're trying to keep property taxes low or trying to improve the safety of our streets for the community members, it is still something that is so significantly important in our community because it is low-hanging fruit that over years or decades that signs may get replaced or updated significantly improves the accessibility and enjoyment of our communities. So of course, I enjoy hearing, your guys' feedback and response for when you guys discuss it later tonight. And hopefully it does get passed because it is something that really needs to be looked at. Because I might be, a young 20-year-old, but there are some wayfinding signs in college that I can't even read. And they're like 12 feet off the ground, like less than 1 inch in text. So I can't imagine what our members of the hard-sided community in our communities are facing when trying to navigate and enjoying our parks in our city. So thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Next, please. It's you're hot.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Tom Rogers. I live at 3355 St. Troy Place. I've reviewed Colwood's land use bylaw and noted that it does not currently address the location of clotheslines on residential properties. As a result, clotheslines appear to be permitted in front yards by default. I'm asking Council to consider whether it would be appropriate to direct staff to review this issue and explore a possible amendment to the land use bylaw that would permit clotheslines only in rear yards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roger. Next, please. You turned it off, sir. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, there you
Oh,
go.
red. Thank you. Sorry. My name is Ronnie. I am from 3550 Charnley Place. And I'm here to talk or ask some questions to council about some things going on with the development. I've walked around my community and talked to many neighbors about this, and community members were not aware of the updated plans that developers have submitted. And I'm just wondering, how do development applications, how can they get changed mid-process with no information being supplied to community members? Some people knew what was happening. They must have been on the website, but there's nothing going out to people. That's a concern to me as a resident. And of course, with this monstrosity proposed going behind us and beside us and in front of us. We invited the developers to our property so they could come and see what the impact would be like to our property, our neighbor's property, all down Charnley Place. And their accommodation or review of their plan was to remove half of the 6th floor. This is ridiculous. I'm not sure how Colwood developments, is this how they're going to go in the future with zero regard for community requests and concerns? Oh, that's 29. Oh my goodness. Okay. Anyways, it was just shocking that they came with such a acceptable compromise to what they're planning. 6 stories is too dense on all 4 buildings. And that was the overall agreement with my community members. The schools are overloaded and outdated, and more families of that magnitude, 313 units, that's 313 families.
I could just get you to wrap up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyways, the schools aren't safe. The students are asked to leave the schools when it's too hot, sit on the floor in the hallways when it's too hot. More kids in the schools isn't going to help. The traffic is obscene. It's just, it can't, I just hope it doesn't happen.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna ask everyone to refrain from that. Thank you.
Where do we?
It's on. You're
right.
hot.
Hi, my name's Alice Chislett. I'm from 3551 Charnley Place. I did do a brief, I sent in a letter. It was just before 12. I don't know if it came in time. Anyways, we're not opposed to development behind us. We're not opposed to development on the Latory Quarter. We want it to be thoughtful development, like we've seen throughout Colwood. Ramming over 600 doors between Wishart and Veterans Memorial, when I avoid going to Latoria to leave between 7:30 and 9. I won't go down there. I left my house at 3:55 the other day. I sat there waiting to turn to go to get groceries for 15 minutes. It took until 2 cars stopped for me to let me turn out and turn left. I have elderly parents. Thank you. You guys got them a family doctor. That's amazing. But the density that's proposed along there, there's no infrastructure for it yet. We don't have the infrastructure for it yet. And quite frankly, when city staff wrote in that report and the developer wrote that there is no impact to our properties, I'd love for you to come and say when in 5 months of the year that we're not going to have sunshine and we don't see tree lines anymore. That's an impact. If I said that to my bosses, I wouldn't have a job. If I wrote that in a report and sent that to my bosses and they signed off on it, I wouldn't have a job. So again, we're not looking for no development. We understand that Colwood is growing, everywhere is growing. But please do not make Colwood the new Langford. Because that's what it feels like. It feels like things are being rammed through. You're not listening to your constituents. But I will make sure that we have a voice come next election as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Which button do I push?
You're
Oh,
on.
I'm Jamie. I live at 3550 Charlie Place. And we invited developers down and Rachel here. And we had some concerns. I asked about sewer hookups. I asked about trees being left. And she obviously said, well, we're not going to cut the trees down in your house. Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate that. But their only concern to me was it was that their density, they bought the property and taking too long. And the only thing they were worried about was they have to go 6 stories so they make a profit. So these developers don't live in our community. I've lived here since I was 2 years old. I'm 52 years old. And you know what? Maybe think about us instead of profits, taxes, and people who don't live here.
Thank you very much. But again, I'm just going to remind everyone that the quorum, I know you're feeling happy about that, but the decorum is that there's no clapping and booing. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Hope you understand our position here. Next, please.
Hello, it's Kia Simonson, 521 Elizabeth Ann Drive. So I was here a meeting or two ago speaking about this too. And I'm just really glad that you came to my house, Ronnie. Thank you. I think that the plan of having 4 6-story apartment buildings is absolutely crazy. It's inappropriate transition. It's too high for the area. I'm not against development. I think thoughtful development with appropriate height is great. I anticipate it. But 6 stories is too high for that spot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please.
I'll go to, I'm hot.
You're hot still, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I wrote, at the last communication, I spoke about the infiltration. Oh, apologies. Lee Maddox 3542 Charlie Place, addressing the same issue. At the last communication, I spoke about the infiltration and displacement of the groundwater or the ground and surface water system that exists throughout this proposed construction site. At a previous meeting, these concerns were briefly addressed and dismissed by the development team, citing a lack of documentation rather than a well-executed geosurvey. This, in my opinion, is an unserious response that underestimates the challenges of construction they face and shifts responsibility to the municipality of Colwood. Leaning on my experience in the construction industry, I see the beginning of a familiar pattern where developers underestimate or minimize the risks and deflect responsibility to the builder. Lost my place. For us in the community, this means an extended construction period and the delays that come with it, as well as our new neighbors potentially dealing with the fallout over the overreach inherent in this plan. Compromised foundations, mold and rust from high moisture levels that weaken concrete, wooden, and steel structures. Fortunately, these are issues of scale. Reducing the scope of this project from 313 units directly reduces the potential impact to the proposed project, our community, the flora and fauna that inhabit this wetland. I will close by saying that you don't displace water, water displaces you. The groundwater pushed aside by the underground portion of this building will push into the surrounding area, roads, walkways, and foundations. That's it.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Tim Day, 3546 Charney Place. When you move into a place and there's nothing in your backyard, you sort of know that something might be coming in your backyard, and that already happened to us. We had a vacant lot behind us, and there's a 2006 house been built there. As part of this proposal is to destroy that house and take down all the trees that's already been established and to replace it with a 6-story building, which is so completely inappropriate and so out of touch with anything else in any place. We have special rules for this Latoria thing, where 6-story buildings are 24 meters tall, not 20 meters tall as they would be at Royal Bay. And as the previous fellow said, that the floodplain is going to be functionally lost. And you can see for how big that peat bog is, 6 meters deep, how much water it holds. And at the corner of Wishart and Latoria, they put 15,000 cubic meters of fill in there, and it's still not stable. They can't build a townhouse on that site. That was approved by this council, yet staff failed to inform you that the land wasn't stable. Same thing has happened across the street. There shouldn't have been building permits for any houses up on top of that boulder wall. The building that they say, building 1, the maximum of fence, it says it would be built last. I would hope that you would put that in writing, that it would be built last, because they're going to have a lot of trouble in the bog down below of trying to do anything. If you drive an excavator over into the field, even now, it will sink before the morning. And
I need you to wrap up there, Tim.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm concerned about the blasting, and the cut is going to be so huge that that boulder wall, that poorly built boulder wall across the road, will be endangered. I think it needs some sort of monitoring in place. And both ends of Latoria have been approved for development 15 years ago, and neither one has been built. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Seeing no other speakers, I will conclude the public participation. And we'll move on to item 6, which is the consent agenda. And can I get a motion for the consent? Okay, Councillor Grove, seconder, please. Councillor Olson, any discussion? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll move on to item 7, which is new business. And we'll start off with 7.1, which is the 2025 annual financial statement. And if I can get Lenora Lee from KPMG is here. Go ahead, Lenora.
Good evening. Thanks for having me at your meeting tonight. I wanted to speak briefly to the highlights of our audit findings report, which is included in your package tonight. Starting with the overall status of our audit, we are substantially complete. There's no significant items that are outstanding other than review and acceptance of the financial statements tonight by council. The financial statements do present the position of the city as well as its percentage ownership of West Shore Parks and Recreation Center, and as a result, they're referred to as consolidated financial statements. As drafted, the auditor's report is a clean and unqualified audit opinion. It indicates there's no material errors in the financial statements, and they do present fairly in accordance with public sector accounting standards. The audit was conducted consistent with the audit planning report, which was presented to you in March earlier this year. and it had a planned materiality level of 1.4 million and an audit posting misstatement threshold of about 68,000. Overall, there was no surprises or unresolved issues as part of the audit process. There was one more complicated land transaction, which management did identify to us as part of the audit planning process, which we assisted with, and we were able to bring that to resolution as part of the audit process. In terms of some of the highlights of the procedures itself, we do perform procedures annually related to fraud risk over management override of controls. And this is the risk that there may be manual journal entries that are posted outside the course of normal day-to-day operations. It exists with all audits, and we are required to perform these procedures every year. There's nothing in particular at the city that is driving this to be a more significant risk other than our mandatory requirements of audit standards. In particular, we look at areas such as estimates, bias, judgment, and where there might be transactions outside the course of normal day-to-day operations. For example, transfers between expense accounts. In each of the procedures we performed, we had no issues or concerns to bring to Council's attention. The next area of focus relates to revenue, receivables, and deferred revenue. Revenue is comprised of a couple approaches. First, related to government transfers. These are generally government grants received during the year. These are tested by reviewing the agreements that are in place and really understanding what the flow of the transaction is and the nature of spend. For example, some grants are received in advance and then are spent down, in which case there would be deferred revenue until eligible expenses are incurred. In other cases, the expenses are incurred first, and then there's a claim submitted and a receivable set up. In other forms of revenue, we perform analytical procedures, primarily comparison to budget and to prior years. As ancillary procedures in this process, we also test deferred revenue and receivables and had no issues or adjustments to note. In the area of capital assets, there are a number of ways in which the financial statements have recognized additions to capital assets. These could be purchased assets, donated assets as it relates to developer donated assets, sidewalks, infrastructure, for example, as well as exchanged or non-cash transactions of capital assets. So in this area, we test a sample of additions looking to the underlying supporting documentation as well as the valuation of those additions. This was the area in which management identified to us there was a more complicated transaction that required a more detailed review. And so we did work together on a land swap arrangement to ensure that it was recorded appropriately in the financial statements. There was two issues noted as part of this transaction. One, a piece of land that was exchanged was not previously recorded in the financial statements, so that needed to be corrected. And then secondly, an evaluation of the value of the exchange, whether it would be recorded at cost or fair value at the transaction date. The net impact of this transaction was the recognition at cost of the land that was given up as well as exchanged. Those transactions have been recorded in the financial statements. What remains is a timing difference that the previous acquisition of land given up was in 1994. That has now been recognized as at the end of 2025 at its correct value. So a bit of timing difference, but as at the end of 2025, everything has been corrected. Next, in terms of accounts payable, accrued liabilities, and expenses, including payroll, in this area, we primarily apply analytical procedures looking at year-over trends in budget as well as prior year. In this area, there was no issues or corrections noted. And lastly, for cash investments and debt, we're able to confirm entire balances with third parties, so with the banks as well as with MFA. And again, no issues were noted in our testing here. I will also note that this year, as a result of the opening of the medical center, we did perform procedures over the expenses incurred as well as the presentation of those expenses. And again, no issues noted or corrections noted. This page here just notes the uncorrected audit differences. So this really just speaks to the timing difference of that land transaction, that it is not material to bring it to go back and correct 2024 or earlier statements. Instead, the 2025 statements were corrected. And then this next page just shows the correction of the initial transaction, which management did note in advance that needed some attention from us. And so again, it wasn't unexpected, but a natural part of the audit process. Lastly, in terms of control observations, we are required to identify any significant or material control deficiencies in our report. We had none to note, and so that's confirmed on this page here. And lastly, the appendices, I won't go into detail on them. In the appendices, we do confirm our independence on an annual basis, and we have noted some of the future accounting standards that will become effective starting in 2027 and onwards. And as usual, we will work with management to adopt those well in advance of the mandatory requirement date so that it is a planned process and well prepared for the actual adoption date in 2027. Lastly, just wanted to thank management for all of their assistance with the audit process. We do ask a lot of questions and look for a lot of supporting documentation, so appreciate the collaboration and timeliness in bringing this report to council. Happy to address any questions.
Thank you very much, Lenora. I love hearing clean audits. So CFO McLennan, do you have anything to add before I open it up for questions?
No, but thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've decided today to just bring forward the statutory requirements due to the timing, and I will be bringing a report back to council next meeting that sort of speaks to the budgetary surplus, which is more understandable by council typically.
Thanks so much, Kathy. I'll open the floor for questions from council. Seeing none, thank you very much, Lenora.
Thank you.
So can I get a mover that the 2025 financial statements be approved, please? Thank you. Councillor Ward and Councillor Olson. Seconds. Discussion. Seeing none. Call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to 7.2, which is traffic calming measures and access restrictions on Hatley Drive. If I can, Mr. Johnson, if I can turn that over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is the traffic calming measures and access restrictions on Hatley Drive. This is a recommendation that came forward at the April 20th Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. The recommendation is that the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee recommend to council that council direct staff to maintain the current restrictions on Hatley Drive as they exist for a period of 18 months. Mr. Rosenberg is here to answer any questions you may have regarding this.
Okay, council, questions? Councillor Jensen.
Sorry, I didn't have a question, Your Honor, Your Worship. That's why I held off. But I was part of that committee meeting, and there was lots of discussion, as was Councillor Day, and the consensus from the committee that it be left as is, that it's well signed and appropriate for the neighborhood at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious why 18 months, like what happens after that? Like can you just elaborate a little bit more on that? What happens after 18 months?
Councillor Jensen.
There is no answer to that. And I know it was Representative Parkinson or committee member Parkinson. I think he was just, he came with that prepared, and it did lead to some discussion after the fact. And I think, quite frankly, people just accepted it as he put forward, but there is no real answer as to what happens in 18 months. It didn't even suggest an automatic renewal or review. It just was kind of an open-ended issue. Maybe Councillor Day can add. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I would just share that while there are some concerns, especially in regard to actual residents being able to access their properties during peak hours from Machosen Road, that overall the feeling, I guess, at the committee of both was that we were somewhat pressed for time. There was a very lengthy agenda, and we wanted to hope that we would at least not make it any worse. So this was a measure that was taken to address a long-standing issue with shortcutting through a residential neighborhood that had left to led to numerous safety concerns being brought forward. Of course, it's not a perfect solution. I don't know if there are any such things, but leaving it as is would give us time, and with the end date that allowed us to bring it forward for another consideration well after council is settled in after the next election, considered any feedback coming forward from the community as to issues or potential solutions, and just brought it back forward. It is working well enough in some respects and not ideal. We considered the options of designating which residences were considered local, who would be allowed to turn at any time of day, but the reality of enforcing that rather difficult. So it's an imperfect solution, but giving us more time to consider options.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to make the motion as chair of the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee? Okay, thank you. Seconder, please, Councilor Grove. Discussion, further discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll move on to 7.3. Perhaps I'll get the chair to talk about this one. Transportation Infrastructure Committee, please. You can talk about this item.
We had the member did actually speak at public participation here this evening and brought forward a well-considered recommendation not to waste any money, but that recommended and the committee supported that council consider allocating funding to support improvements to the city-owned signage over time by upgrading, replacing, or removing signs as they reach end of life, with focus on improved legibility, accessibility, and reduction of redundant signage. There is also a visual aid that he provided so that you can see some of the signs that he was talking about. If staff wanted to bring that up, you would see that some of them are what was referred to as the fingerboard wayfinding signage, which is fairly small, and for the location where it's been applied, I guess it just was necessary to move it well up above, and the signs are fairly small and pretty difficult to read. And if you go to the next page, you'll see another example. This one, this is the corner of Machosen and Latoria. And you can see the road sign is quite difficult to read from even standing across the road in person. So it's just recommending that, hey, let's take note of the places where the signage isn't working. And as we're able to replace signs, do so that we make continuous improvement. So I would move the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Can I get a seconder so that we can start discussion on this, please? Okay, thank you. Councilor Jordison. Councilor Olson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand and appreciate the sentiment behind the motion. I think a question that I have for staff probably with the signs is I feel like a lot of the signs are new. Even the ones throughout in the older neighborhoods, like did we recently do a refresh of the signs throughout Colwood? Because I feel like maybe 5 years ago we did a refresh, not specifically in the Royal Bay area, but just in general, the roadsides. I feel like they were recently done.
Mr. Rosenberg.
Thank you for the question through your worship. Yes, we just completed that program actually. So if you're down in the Royal Bay area, you can see that bluish sign and the different graphics that are on that. So yes, that has been done as an initial. We have done a little bit of investigation, and if you'd like, your worship, I can give you a couple of details about signage and where we're at, and then you can decide if you want to just go with recommendation or get staff to do more work or whatever you'd like. We're interested in a couple of stats.
Yes, please, if you could.
So we've got about 1,800 street signs. We have about $25,000 in street sign inventory currently. So if we decide to go with the motion, staff would like direction on whether you want us to use the current inventory
and then start looking at new signs, or whether we would just toss out the inventory and then move towards a new sign. We haven't found another municipality that's going to a larger street blade sign currently. Currently, the signs are 6 inches high and 32 inches long. You could go to a bigger sign, which would be 9 inches high and about 40 inches long. We suspect that depending, some street signs will need to change our tailspar posting as well as our anchoring in the ground as well. We have approximately 1,800 street signs. It would be somewhere between $100 to $150 per sign. So overall, over the years, you'd be looking at an additional $300,000 to $400,000 in costs. I can't speak to the wayfinding too much because I haven't been involved in the budgeting of that. That would be up to Mrs. Russell, or Miss Russell. So I just thought I'd give you some of those stats, and we did check to see if other municipalities are doing anything with the 9-inch signs, and so far we haven't found anybody. We reached out to the local suppliers. So we would be the first. That doesn't mean we can't do it, just means we're being a leader.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you. Councillor Jordison, then Councillor Day. Oops.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to ask, what do we base the design of our signs on now? Like, and when is it recommended to go to a consultant or what have you to ensure that we're, just like the website and stuff, that we're making it accessible for people and that and whatnot? And when was that last done?
I can't speak to the way signing part of it, but for the street sign and regulatory signs, we just use the transportation manual of Canada, so the TAC manual. So that's just standardized throughout the country.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that the motion does actually say that no throwing out any signs. Simply, as we're ordering new signs, look to improve them.
Okay, that's great. So I just need a clarification because I watched the infrastructure committee meeting, and I thought we were talking about the wayfinding signs. I didn't realize we were talking about street signs, because this is going to be an expensive endeavor, I think, anyways. But the question that I do directly have right now, is there not standards for like street signs? Like, can we deviate from those? I would have thought, because they all look the same size to me, there must be a standard of some sort here.
Yeah, it is standard. That's 6-inch by 32 inches standard size. Your font color, your blade color, all of that is they're not regulatory signs. You literally can put whatever street sign you'd like to put up, and obviously you want to make sure that your fire department's on board, because your emergency services are really the ones that are critical to see. We haven't seen any complaints from ambulance, fire, or police with regards to accessibility and seeing that, but certainly I can appreciate demographically that there may be some issues for some people that are experiencing vision problems, for sure. But we do meet the standards of, from what we know, all the municipalities. Our signs are just different because they're blue with like a yellow high vis on them. So they show up nice at night, but in sunshine, sometimes you can be a little bleed into the sunshine.
And the last part of my question, if you do go with bigger signage, then there's an engineering element to it, right? There has to be, because you have to look at, it's like an aircraft. You've got greater wind loads, right? And it's not so much the signage being destroyed, but you may have to go with thicker posts and things like that. You never know. I don't know what the requirements are, but could you talk about?
Yeah, there's I doubt we'd go to the extent of putting some engineering analysis to it. Probably what we do a lot of times in public works, we'll take our sign base, we'll put it out somewhere, we'll put a couple blades on it. If we start getting some problems, then we'll change out the Telspar sign, or we'll change out our base. Like our bases right now are basically a little over a cubic foot of concrete. So we'd go to like a cubic foot and a half of concrete. So there'd be a little bit more cost there. And then again, depending on the anchoring of the sign blades themselves, because there will be a wind factor on it.
it's interesting, you know, when it comes to wind, if you ever stopped at a traffic light, those signs can really get rocking in there. So we definitely would start looking at that. But to start with, we just increase and bolster some of our anchoring and see how it goes and adjust accordingly.
Okay, that's great. So, so this meant all street signs, and I just want to make sure I was clear on that. It's all street signs. We're talking about the streets and as well as the wayfinding signs. Because if it was just the wayfinding signs, I'd be absolutely saying, yes, go ahead, because they are small. I'll admit that they are small, but the street signs, I don't know. But, but the whole. Someone's pointing.
Sorry, just Councillor Grove speaking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Councillor Grove, please.
I'm on left field here, I know, so. I have the same question about which signs we're talking about. The wayfinding signs, I find them difficult to read myself. However, when I'm navigating, driving on a bicycle, if I were, even walking, I don't need those signs. We all carry a GPS in our pocket nowadays, so I'm not sure that the street signs need that much size improvement. If they're aged out, then it's a great time to change it. I understand the sentiment. I assumed when I saw the motion, I also watched the committee meeting, and I thought we're talking about signs in general. There's school zones, there's crosswalks. Well, most of those are well marked. There's other signage indicators of various, like do not turn right between 7 and 9 on certain streets. And those types of signs often are, by their placement, not particularly clear. So during the committee meeting, that's what I was thinking was being discussed, not particularly the actual street signs. So I would be, it's hard for me to know how to vote on this, not knowing what signs. If we could find out, is that possible to have more clarity in the motion or in the direction? So
You can make that amendment to the
how
motion.
do I do that? I'll do that amendment to clarify which signs specifically we're talking about. John, sorry, John.
Thank you, Your Worship. At this time, based on the committee discussion, staff's expectation is that it's street sign blades and wayfinding. And we're not looking at regulatory signs like stop signs, speed signs, and those types of things. So what I'm hearing is you'd like to support wayfinding. You could always include wayfinding and disclude the street sign blades if you'd like. But at this time, if you wanted to add regulatory, I'd need to have that added to the motion to get the understanding.
So, Councillor Grove,
I wish I had a more clear idea of what we're looking for. If the street sign is the size of the street signs is a problem for individuals in the community and traveling through, then yes, we need to make them bigger, I think, as time goes, according to this. But I'll just rest my case at this point.
Councillor Olsen.
Sorry, not to keep circling around, but what is the lifespan of the wayfinding signage?
I don't know for certain, but based on the material types I'd see, I would say you're probably looking in the 5 to 10 year range, depending on the type. The finger signs, I think, would be a little different than, say, the big totem type signs that they're using. The totem signs seem pretty skookum, so I think they'd be close to a 10-year period. And I'm sure they need refreshings with a touch up for paint and so on. So, and then most times with a lot of these signs, it's like our street sign blades. It usually is, somebody hits one with a car or somebody takes one or they get really faded and they're 10 years plus on the fading type of a sign. So I would, if you made me pick right now, I'd say plus or minus 10 years for most signs.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's helpful for me. I think I could get behind some improvement on the wayfinding signage as it needs to be replaced, not spending the money up front to replace them all. But with the street signs, I would separate those potentially. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ward for the first time, then Councillor Day.
Thank you, Mayor. I think first of all, I would laud Mr. Sparks, the committee member, for bringing it forward. I think anytime we're considering the needs of those with accessibility issues or visual issues and other things, that's commendable. We should look through that lens, I think, on any kind of infrastructure development to look for those who are most challenged with it. In this case, though, I tend to lean towards what Councillor Olson just referenced, is that I'd be more inclined to look at sign placement. I think Mr. Sparks' graphic made a good point, you know, in terms of the height issue there, if you're looking for something. And I'm thinking even not visually challenged, but tourists or visitors to the area, particularly in newer areas like Royal Bay and Beachlands, if they're guests there, you know, trying to find their way around, ensuring that the signage is prominent and visible. In terms of the street signs themselves, I'll be candid. I think I don't have an issue. I looked into it, and really the governance on that is what's called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. That's Canada-wide. It isn't a mandate. It's not a federally mandated guide, but it is sort of the best practice manual for signage. And I think that's why we heard from staff, from Mr. Rosenberg, that there are no other jurisdictions really at this point deviating from that. There is a sort of inclination to keep standardization as you go community to community. In fact, it's in the news right now where the Ontario Premier has tried to add larger signage to school zones and speed zones and some other places, only to discover that they can't fit them to the current poles and things that they have. And now there's a massive concern around cost overruns and how to implement that. And I believe Mr. Rosenberg already forewarned us a little bit there that this could be bigger than just simply bolting on a new sign. So as I said, I'm inclined to look at it from a wayfinding and visual standpoint, because I think the intent of the motion and the vote of the committee was clear. But in terms of actual street signs, I don't think I would support a change there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I was just going to suggest that this is bogging us down, that we could certainly do some more work on this at the committee level and bring it back. I think it is a good point. I do think that I see larger signs in other communities, or perhaps it is that they are placed differently. Because where there's an overhead light, for example, and they put the sign on the light, it looks quite a bit larger than the signs that are on the side road. But more than anything, my concern is with the placement of many of the signs that we have, is that they're so high up. And I'm sure that there's a reason for that, but coming up with a compromise, I'd be very happy to bring this back from the committee with more information if this is not clear enough.
Okay, thank you very much. So right now, you've already made the motion for the current recommendation here. So we can call the vote on that, and then you can, if you wish to make that one to go back to committee. Oh yeah, or you're going to refer. So do you want to make that referral then, please? Councillor Day, please. Yes, you're right.
Thank you. I'll move that we refer this back to the committee for just more clarity for council.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Grove. Seconds. Discussion. Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. The next item is 7. Where's it? Yeah, 7.4. Bill 44. Mr. Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Bill 44, the small scale multi-unit housing implementation follow-up. The recommendation is that council endorse the proposed approach to implement the small scale multi-unit housing, or SMUH, and that council direct staff to bring forward amendments to the Colwood Land Use Bylaw number 151, 1989, and the off-street parking regulation bylaw number 1909, 2022 for first, second, and third readings, and that staff will conduct a review within 6 months of adoption of these amendments and return to council with any recommended changes or improvements, and that council consider the non-mandated amendment to remove the form and character development permit requirement for lots under 550 square meters and proposed developments with 3 to 4 units, and further that council consider the non-mandated amendment to decrease parking requirements for SMUH developments. There is a staff presentation, and Kelsea Fielden, our planner 2, is here to provide that presentation should you wish to receive it, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Thank you very much, Kelsea.
So thank you. I'll be walking council through the proposed changes to the Bill 44 Small Scale Multi-Unit Implementation Plan. So to quickly recap, staff presented the proposed methodology for SMU implementation for Colwood at the March 23rd council meeting. This included a new permitted use to the restricted zones and a new Schedule C to the land use bylaw, which regulates the setback, lot coverage, height, and more. At this meeting, council resolved that the implementation plan be referred back to staff for further review. Council specifically mentioned reviewing the implementation and changes at the City of Richmond and City of Burnaby as they have made updates after experiencing SMU built forms. Staff conducted additional review against the Provincial Policy and Site Standards Manual, other CRD municipalities, and the City of Burnaby and Richmond. Generally speaking, Colwood's proposed implementation aligns with the references above. There are some planning contextual differences, particularly with Burnaby and Richmond, but many of the regulations align with other municipalities, including with other municipalities that are currently experiencing construction of SMU built forms. Based on the review of neighboring municipalities, including Burnaby and Richmond, amendments are proposed to Colwood's implementation plan to incorporate lessons learned from municipalities that have experienced the construction of SMU. The slide above focuses on the most likely built form in Colwood, which is 4 units. The front yard setback with rear lane access has increased from 2 meters to 4 meters. The front yard setback with front access has increased from 4 meters to 5.5 meters to meet the off-street parking bylaw required car length. The rear yard setback has increased from 3 meters to 6 meters, and the side yard has increased from 1.2 to 1.5 meters. Furthermore, staff are recommending removing the subdivision regulations for the fee simple attached housing row home built form. If row homes are determined to be desirable by the development community, staff may consider bringing these regulations in the future, but at this time, it's still being determined whether SMU built forms will have significant uptick in Colwood. The mandated amendments council must consider is the land use bylaw amendment with the updated Schedule C mentioned above, and secondly, the off-street parking bylaw, which will remove parking requirements for properties within 400 meters of a prescribed bus stop for SMU specific developments. Council is also asked to consider 2 non-mandated optional amendments. When these amendments were introduced at the March 2nd Planning and Land Use Committee, committee members did unanimously pass the non-mandated amendments for council's consideration. Oops. The amendments include reducing the parking requirements for SMU developments, specifically for 3 to 4 units, to 1 per unit. At this time, depending on the built form and location, the parking requirement is generally 2 parking spots per unit. If council passes this resolution, the change to the off-street parking bylaw will be updated prior to first reading of the amending bylaw. The second amendment that council may wish to consider is removing the form and character development permit requirement for SMU developments, particularly for those 3 to 4 units and on small lots of 550 square meters or less. Currently, all new single-family lots under 550 square meters in lot size, which is the most common subdivision type in Colwood at this time, are currently subject to a form and character DP. So to mitigate this, key design guidelines could be incorporated directly into Schedule C or the general regulations in the land use bylaw. This amendment would not be completed by the June 30th, 2026 deadline. However, it would be, as it would require an OCP amendment and additional review. However, this resolution would provide direction to staff to consider removing this requirement at the next OCP amendment. The Bill 44 SMU updates must be completed by June 30th of this year. To meet that deadline, council will consider first, second, and third reading of the amending bylaws on June 8th, with adoption currently scheduled for June 22nd. This timeline also supports the required notification timelines, which will be advertised on the website and in the newspaper. So staff's recommendation is that council endorse the proposed amended methodology for implementing SMU and direct staff to prepare the necessary amendments to the land use bylaw and the off-street parking bylaw. Council may also wish to consider directing staff to conduct a review within 6 months of adoption and return to council with any recommended changes should they be determined. Council may also wish to consider the optional non-mandated amendments to reduce parking requirements and to remove the form and character DP requirements. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Kelsey. I'll open the floor for questions from Councillor Day. We'll start with you.
Thank you. Kelsey, I'm just wondering what percentage of Colwood's future population is SMU anticipated to serve? So we have the housing needs report. We had some ideas from that. So I'm just wondering what our targets are for SMU.
Thank you very much for the question. So SMU is applicable to lots that are connected to sewer, and it's about, as I understand, about 46% of Colwood or 40% are connected to sewer. So those are the lots that would be targeted for SMU.
And since a number of the lots that may be eligible for SMU may also be in the hillside shoreline designated areas, and therefore, you know, we would be looking for meeting the needs on a unique piece of property. For example, the driveway length to accommodate parking may not work for a home with a fairly steep driveway. So I'm just wondering how you anticipated evaluating the needs of where the hillside shoreline comes into play.
Thank you again for the question. So if a property is located in the hillside and shoreline designation and they have sewer and they are permitted to do SMU, it is up to the homeowner or the builder or the developer to meet the regulations of all bylaws. That includes the percentage for driveway height and width and connections. So that would be determined at the time of building permit if a homeowner wishes to come forward to build SMU.
So the other thing that I noticed in your report was that it spoke to the alternative to the form and character or development permit is incorporating design guidelines. So I'm just wondering, doesn't that make a lot more work for staff to do to provide the guidelines without having necessarily a development coming forward? Wouldn't it be less onerous to have them show you how they would meet the requirements?
Yeah, that's a really great great point. At this time, so when it's a form and character development permit, the design guidelines in the OCP are guidelines, and so it is up to staff and the applicant to review those guidelines. But when you bring those guidelines into a zoning bylaw, they make them a regulation, and it makes them a little actually stronger for staff to implement those design guidelines. So that can include things like outdoor space. That can include things like vertical versus horizontal siding, situations like that. So from a staff perspective, we would it would give us a stronger tool to use for the use of form and character.
Okay, and just on that point, then would your guidelines that are enshrined include looking at the permeability of the site and the retention of natural areas to address stormwater and those issues?
That can absolutely be included in those types of design guidelines, both in Schedule C or the general guidelines. Yeah, those can be included for sure.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jordison, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Bear with me, I have a few questions here and some statements. I guess it's up to Colwood to decide the regulatory parameters included in the SMU designation, I guess, but that's been laid out by the province.
The province provided guidance that municipalities must consider, but Colwood is not required to adopt the provincial guidance as specifically directed. So I guess I'm just having a hard time with, Colwood already tripled the future density in established neighborhoods when approving the 2018 OCP, which was a significant change. And the proposed SMUH regulatory parameters further increase the possible density from Colwood's new neighborhood FAR of 1.2 to 1.5 or 1.8. And that's a 25 to 50% increase above Colwood's new FAR for the neighborhood land use. So I'm just concerned about the size of what we're putting into neighborhoods. But I guess I appreciate the work that's been gone into this proposal, and I understand the province's direction. But however, I can't support the regulations as currently proposed. The concern isn't with the gentle infill itself, but the scale and intensity being permitted in existing neighborhoods without sufficient planning work or community consideration. As highlighted in the public submission, the proposed framework would allow building forms and densities that significantly exceed what currently exists in many established neighborhoods. Residents are already expressing concerns that redevelopment is not fitting within neighborhood character, and these regulations would further increase allowable density beyond the city's existing OCP framework. I also share the concern that important supporting work, including infrastructure planning, transportation considerations, and growth financing tools have not yet been completed, like the ACC requirement. I believe we need to take the time to get this right rather than adopting a framework that may create a long-term impacts we were not prepared for. For those reasons, I'll not be supporting the recommendation as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for this, Kelsey. The talk about this June 30th deadline, like I take it this is statutory, and we're trying to, as I recall, we had to make some adjustments and we had to do it fairly quickly to get ahead of the deadline. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct. This new June 30th deadline comes from the Bill 25 that came earlier this year addressing Colwood's situation that 3 units do count as restricted zones. So yes.
Thank you. So we are up against a wall, and your timeline is quite tight there. Our timeline is quite tight as I read it. So I do want to get this across the finish line to make sure that as a community that we are compliant. A couple questions. You spoke about no parking within 400 meters of. Can you just circle back to that? It was really quick and I was reading it and then it was gone.
Yes, no problem. So yes, that is also comes from provincial legislation that we are not permitted to require parking within 400 meters of a prescribed bus stop. So that's Blink 95. And that is only related to SMUH development. That's not any existing development. If they want to develop into SMUH, they do not have to require parking. That doesn't mean that they won't provide it. It's that the city can't force parking.
Interesting. So let's follow the bouncing ball for a sec here. I come in, I have a significant lot up on Triangle Mountain of a good size, and I want to put 6 units in there, and there happens to be a bus stop on Fulton Road within a couple hundred meters. I could put up some kind of 2 or 3 story building with 6 units and an area parking spot to be had.
So right now, there are no prescribed bus stops on Fulton Road. But if the future there is a rapid bus on Fulton Road, that would be correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. That's a tough pill to swallow, let me tell you. I know they're doing it in other jurisdictions like California, and it's having an impact on existing streets, as you might imagine. Fast forward to the form and character. I guess the concern that came from this council was how do we avoid some of these monstrosities that are going up in current neighborhoods? Talk to me about the form and character and the controls that we might have as a community to avoid said big buildings going up next to your house.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So Schedule C has the zoning regulations, which will regulate the form of development on these lots. So it has setbacks, lot coverage, height, similar to all of our other zones. The staff recommendation this evening is for council to consider removing the form and character development permit requirement for lots that are 550 meters squared or under, or SMU lots, basically of less than 6 units. The alternative to just simply removing that is to integrate some of the design guidelines that are within our OCP. And as Kelsey mentioned, we're essentially elevating them to regulations within the zoning bylaws. So that allows it to be a stronger tool for staff to check it for enforcement, essentially. Because it's a regulation, it is enforced by bylaw. So it's not just a design guideline, it's not up to interpretation. It's much stronger. Just for some context for the form and character development permits, just as an example, in Beachlands, we estimate that there will be at least 150 lots that will qualify for that development permit for lots that are under 550 meters squared. So for form and character development permits for those intensive residential lots, we're checking for landscaping. We check for access to secondary suites. If the application is for multiple properties, we would check to ensure that there's no repetition in the character of the home. So I would say it's a very high level check because it's just form and character for a single family home compared to a 6-story building, which we would, there are many more design guidelines for that type of development.
I think I get it. I'm hearing what you're saying. So just back to Kelsey for a second. My first question about the 400-meter bus stop is, help me out. The bill from the province, I mean, does it specify service levels with regard to that bus stop? I mean, there's some remote bus stops in this community that don't get a whole lot of service.
Yeah, so it's 400 meters of a prescribed bus stop, and a prescribed bus stop is it runs every 15 minutes from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay, I did recollect that. Thank you so much.
So that's basically one bus stop in all Colwood, yeah.
Yes, it's just the Blink 95 route. So those few
Yeah.
stops on
I
Rail
wonder
Road.
if you could recommend a bus stop. Oh, thank you.
Councilor Grove? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just asking about, we talked about the sewer. So these regulations would apply to sewer properties only, correct? So does that mean the homes, of which there are many on septic, are still qualified to build, contain a suite and build a non-attached ADU?
Yes, that's correct.
And then the next question I have is about the cost of infrastructure and how, even with these smaller units, the SMUH units, how is infrastructure costed and paid for by whom? And we don't have a normal development application. Do they just accumulate and the density increase throughout the neighborhood? Just sort of curious how sidewalks get built and
Yeah, there will be some issues with regards to infrastructure. For instance, most places when they increase density to several units are gonna have water problems with regards to supply of water for fire, for potable water and so on. So our current DCC bylaw might have to be amended to include these types of units so that they'll have to pay DCCs as well. So that would be one way to look at a couple of our existing bylaws and just change them so that they can account for these types of developments.
yeah, and a lot of these things apply to even the non-SMUH properties like septic as well. And with the water commission, there's discussions always around water pressure, which means increasing the storage if needed, or the pressure stations. They might have 4 pumps and all 4 are going full on. I think we had a conversation about sewer to that in that vein not long ago, but it applies to the potable water as well, maintaining the pressures. So
It's not that I'm opposed to this recommendation at all. I was just sort of curious how things are balanced. So there's quite a bit of work to be done. Thank you. I think always.
Council Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to Kelsey, I'm just curious, trying to understand a little bit in the research that I did. I couldn't find a lot of linkage to floor area ratio for any other SMU I guess implementation out there in other communities. The only one I could really find was Vancouver, which I expected to be higher than what it was. It was around 1.1 to 1.25, I think was their floor area ratio. And I just wonder how we arrived at what we have, because if I'm not mistaken, we're looking at a FAR of 1.5 on a 4 dwelling unit structure, or any at 1.8 on 5 to 6. So why are we kind of the outlier on that versus Vancouver, for example?
Thank you for the question and through the chair. And yeah, FAR is a great conversation. It is a older form of kind of determining density. So there are a few other municipalities that are not currently using FAR for their SME development. So that includes Esquimalt and Sooke and Langford do not currently have FAR as part of their SMU, as well as Colwood, where it is regulated via setbacks, lot coverage, and height. However, there are a few other CRD municipalities that are using FAR. So Oak Bay, their FAR ranges. It does depend on a few situations between 0.6 and 0.8. V Royal uses a minimum and maximum kind of building floor area, which is essentially very similar to FAR. And Signage applies a 1 FAR for their SMU. And so it is something that Colwood could consider. It is not something that we have typically used for our developments, particularly for small lot subdivisions or for single families. FAR is not particularly something that Colwood has used, but it is something that we can certainly consider.
Yeah, and I think just to follow up on that, again through the chair, my concern here is how do we regulate the size of some of these structures going into what I would call a legacy neighborhood, your standard single family neighborhood. It would see it's very imposing to suddenly have, a 4-plex next door, potentially a 6-plex, let alone with no parking and other things. And I think, that is a real concern, I think, for a lot of people in Colwood. And my goal is to try to minimize it. And I understand we have certain requirements from the provincial government. Whether or not I buy into those as being valid is a whole other question. But I guess what I'm looking for is to understand what's the minimum we can do to, I'll be very blunt about it, I guess. I'm looking to understand what's the bare minimum we can do to meet the provincial regulations, but to protect the integrity of our existing neighborhoods.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the province is recommending municipalities to steer away from using FAR as a regulation to regulate density on a property. They're wanting municipalities to focus more on setbacks and lot coverage, because that just allows for more flexibility in the buildable area of a property. So what we have before you does not include FAR as a regulation within Schedule C. Now, if council would like us to explore adding FAR, or some municipalities also have included a maximum GFA as well for SMU developments, staff can certainly look at what an appropriate FAR would be. And when we return with the amending bylaw with the regulations, we can include an FAR or a GFA that would be appropriate in our context. I would also add that the staff recommendation does include for us to return to council in 6 months after we adopt Schedule C with any lessons learned or any recommended changes. You know, this is the first time that Colwood will have small scale multi-unit housing regulations. So it is something that we might have to change and that's okay.
Great, thank you. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a quick question. If the recommendation passes tonight, with respect to removing the forming character, is there an intention with staff to create like any like template designs?
Are you referring to like the graphics that other municipalities have showing like what SMU could look like on a lot?
Yeah, like I feel like I've had this conversation and there have been, I believe, some municipalities that have created like template designs for smooth development. So I'm just curious if that's something that staff are currently exploring.
So the province does have a manual that does have some graphics showing how SMU can fit on a lot. If we wanted it to be for the specific Colwood context, we would have to get like a graphic designer to do that work. So if council would like something like that, and we can certainly explore options for it.
Mr. Mayor, if I could interject, some communities like Kelowna have put out a design guideline of what each one of these would look like on a potential lot. I encourage you to have a look at that because it is quite dense from what they're proposing. And certainly from our perspective, it would need to be a made in Colwood solution, not taken from some other community with, you know, different composition, different services, things of that nature. As we know, you know, a large majority of our residents are on septic, and that does have an impact on the ability to use these sorts of regulations. So that is something that I think we would want to look at and tailor specifically for Colwood to say what it would look like, what that building form could potentially look like, and have it a made in Colwood solution, not out a boilerplate that we've seen in some other communities.
Yep, thank you very much. That was one of my points actually, because I was having a hard time imagining what this looks like, especially on Colwood lots. You know, we have a bunch of variables too, and you're going to consider all the, you know, the limited sidewalks, with septic on some things, you know, you got stormwater constraints here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So my other two specific questions are, I noticed here that you say we'll conduct a review within 6 months of adoption. So what does that look like? In 6 months, success looks like what? So do you have the metrics already set up for that?
So I think we would return to council with examples of SMU developments that have occurred since adoption. That's not to say that we will see them either. As we've mentioned, the biggest limitation to small scale multi-unit housing in Colwood is the connection to sewer. So we might not even see any SMU developments within 6 months, but if we do, we could come back to council and share the developments, what the scale was, how those regulations worked, and any recommended changes to the regulations that we adopted.
Okay. And so my last question is just if we accept these 3 to 4 unit SHMU from the form and character DPs, what specific design requirements become enforceable in Schedule C? That was a big blank in my own head.
So that can still be explored. So removing that development permit requirement is an OCP amendment.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, so we can bring forward concurrent amendment to the OCP to remove the development permit requirement. And then we could bring forward an amendment to the land use bylaw to add design guidelines within the land use
Fair
bylaw.
enough. Okay, thank you. Understand. Councillor Day?
Thank you. The part that's really bothering me, I guess, about it is the parking issue. And you've added the optional parking requirement, which is 1 space per unit, which if it's, as was described in the report, like a stacked duplex, basically 2 downstairs and 2 up. Under this, I believe the requirement would then be 4 parking spaces completely within the site itself. But currently, if you have a home with a suite and an additional dwelling unit somewhere on your property, you would only have to have 3 spaces, 2 for the main home and 1, it says, for the suite ADU. Wouldn't it be 4 spaces? Because you would need 1 for the ADU as well as for the suite?
So the current parking requirements, that's correct, is 2 for the single family, 1 for the secondary suite, and then an additional parking space for the ADU. So 4 spaces in total. What we're saying is to incentivize SMU, council could consider reducing the parking requirement for more SMU-like development. So a single family, a secondary suite, and an ADU would still require 4 spaces, but like a threeplex, for example, would require 3 parking spaces, so 1 per unit. So it's just in an effort to incentivize SMU as recommended by the province.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jordison.
Thank you. My second time, I just have a couple of questions. I just wanted to ask, sorry, it looks like setbacks were proposed in Schedule C. But those changes only impact the position of the building on the lot. So how come no changes weren't amended to the scale or the magnitude of the building allowed? So the changes that we recommended from the previous version that council saw was based on lessons that we learned from Richmond and Burnaby, and then comparing with other CRD municipalities. Based on that, these were the recommendations that we brought forward. If council wants us to review those before we bring back that amending bylaw, we certainly can. I would say that June 8th is a pretty hard deadline to make that June 30th mandated deadline. Okay, thank you. My other question was, I did mention that the Colwood has yet to introduce an amenity cost charge bylaw. And I just want to, make it known that without an amenity cost charge bylaw, any incremental density from SMU will not be contributing towards the funds normally negotiated with applicants at rezoning. So this has implications for how the city will finance and the community infrastructure being driven by growth. So when is that planned to be looked at? Thank you for the question. So the development of the ACC bylaw is included within our master policy list. When staff were developing that list and creating sort of a plan for the next couple of years, it is important to develop the ACC bylaw concurrently with the update to the land use bylaw, because we have all of our CACs within the land use bylaw. Those will need to be removed from the land use bylaw before we get an ACC bylaw, so that we're not essentially double dipping. And so that will likely be a project that we'll be seeking direction from council to start in the next couple of years. Best practices is for us to develop and update the OCP first before doing the land use bylaw. Our land use bylaw was adopted in 1989, so it is certainly set for an update. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, can I get a motion, please? Someone want to make a recommendation? Okay, go ahead. I think we need an answer on the last part of the recommendation, if you're going to be doing the recommendation. Sorry, Councillor Jensen. There we go.
Thank you. I'm happy to move the staff recommendation. There was a part that required direction there, wasn't it? I'm going to move the staff recommendation as posted, and just I do have a few comments. I'll wait for discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so that last part of it is not definitive, though. I think you want a decision from us that council consider the non-mandated amendment to decrease parking requirements for SMU developments. So you want us a yes or no from us, I think, right? So do you want to make a change your what you want to say on that one, Councillor Jensen?
I'll just do it as proposed. And
Consider. To endorse. Yeah, it should be endorse. Yeah, adopt. Yeah. Yeah, same, right above it too. Yeah, good point. Okay, can I get a seconder and then we'll open it up for discussions? Okay, thank you, Councillor. Ward, please, and I'll open up for discussion. Start with Councillor Day, please.
Thank you. Without the parking decrease, I would have supported this going forward, but I was hoping you were just making the other part of the amendment and not, or other part of the motion, but not that. I do feel that it is important to incorporate additional housing units where possible in an affordable way. But parking is a big issue and it's getting worse all the time. And I don't think it's too much to ask that there be one spot for each unit.
Perfect. Councillor Ward.
I would just respond to Councillor Day's comments. I would agree that parking is a significant issue, although in this case, to me, it's going to depend on the type of the unit. You know, if it's a small duplex, one parking spot to me is somewhat aligned with what we have elsewhere. I would argue that some of the worst offenders for parking in Colwood are the single family homeowners with suites and accessory dwellings that should park everything on the property, but have a boat and have an RV, have a bunch of other cars. And I'm serious, you drive through any neighborhood and you see a home with 6 cars parked there. You know, it's not the smaller units that are the problem. That being said, we do have some townhome developments and others that could use more visitor parking that overflow onto the road. So this is kind of a uniform issue across the board. I don't know the wording on an amendment, but I would look to maybe find a way to align it more with what we have for other multi-home requirements. Because again, in this case, a 3-plex could be something very different than a 4-plex. You could have over/under duplexes that are 1 bedrooms and 1 car for each unit is sufficient. You could have a 3-plex that are essentially 3 townhomes. Each one has families. Each one has 2 cars, and now you've got 6 vehicles there. So I would look for it to be probably aligned with what we would expect from a bedroom standpoint versus a unit standpoint, in alignment with our current parking bylaw. But I haven't looked at it, so I don't have a motion on the top of my head.
Thank you very much. Just a clarification, Mari. When we're talking SMU, we're not talking about 3-plexes and 4-plexes though, because you've taken that out now, right? Is that correct? Okay. So which is a 4-plex?
So yeah, SMU would be considered a 3-plex or a 4-plex. We're just not considering a single family, a secondary suite, and an ADU as small scale multi-unit housing.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for that clarity. I think that's important because I think I had in my mind exactly what we were talking about: a large home with, say, an in-law suite with an elderly person, and then a student rental, so you could get away with three spots. So that's interesting. I am conflicted, and further to Councilor Ward's question, I was thinking about that. You know, if it was a apartment building, we would expect like 1 point something per unit. Is it not 1.1, 1.2, something like that?
So it depends how many bedrooms and where you are in the city as well.
So it's tough to come up with something that would be consistent with that. Thank you. I'll yield, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm similar to Counselor Day. I'm just a picky guy when it comes to parking. And, you know, I just, doesn't matter what we do here. We are not Victoria, you know, we don't have a downtown core per se. We're a car-centric municipality. And I just, and when it says non-mandated, I love that wording. I can't endorse, you know, the reduction. If it's non-mandated, you know, we should have the say on that. So I just cannot endorse that. That's the only part of that entire motion that I can't agree with. I can't get my head around that. So Councillor Day, please.
Thank you. I'd like to propose an amendment. I'm not sure, I guess I'll just ask staff what would be easier to work with, whether we just take out the additional parking requirements or amend the parking requirements to include the parking requirements be relevant to the number of bedrooms per unit. That's the best I could come up with on the fly, because if you have a 4-unit SMU, it would require 4 parking spaces. If you limited that to a 3-unit SMU, they would need 3 parking spaces. But what I think might happen is that you will get a 4-unit SMU that's disguised as a 3-unit SMU by having the sneaky suite somewhere.
And just to provide some clarification of our current parking requirements in the off-street parking bylaw. So we do have an attached housing use, which does include triplex, row house and townhouse, which is 1.5 units in the urban center and then 2 spaces in all other areas. So that would be the reduction. It would basically be from 2 per unit down to 1 per unit, just as an example.
It's a big jump.
But it leaves no parking for guests at all, correct?
Yes, thank you. So at this SMU was not considered for visitor parking. So it would just be for the dwelling units.
So I would then propose my amendment would be that it be consistent with 1 space per unit. I guess that's fine, but I feel like there's going to be something missed there. But I guess you come back in 6 months and find out what the problems were.
So I'm not too sure what you've proposed. Okay, go ahead. Oh, Council Ward, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would argue that it's inconsistent to have visitor parking spaces in residential homes. Single-family homes don't require them. People park in driveways or streets, so that shouldn't be part of the discussion here. I'm going to move that we modify the staff recommendation to apply the urban center parking requirement for attached housing of 1.5 per dwelling unit to this. Because to me, if we just simply apply bylaw 1909, then you're insisting on 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit, which to me would defeat it entirely. But 1.5 I think is reasonable, and any proponent that comes forward to do this can certainly seek a variance if they have a valid argument otherwise. So, you know, if they decide that they've got unique circumstances, they're more than welcome to bring that forward. But 1.5 to me eliminates the parking challenge. And that's consistent with parking bylaw 1909 right now. In an urban center area, it's 1.5 per dwelling unit for attached housing that includes triplex, row house, and townhome.
Good compromise. Can I get a seconder on that? Okay, thank you, Councillor Dave. Seconds it. Discussion on the amendment. Councillor Jensen.
Sorry, Your Worship, you must have missed it, but I did call a point of order. I was prepared to withdraw my initial motion because I'm worried for staff keeping up from all the amendments here, and I would like to tidy this up and make sure it's simple. I mean, are we all caught up with exactly?
Yeah, we just changed the last one.
Would it be more useful if I withdrew them? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Worship.
So you withdraw. Sorry, I missed that conversation here. Okay. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as amended? Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. Oh, no, sorry. Those opposed? Okay, Councillor Jordison. And you, so I have to call, so the original is still there, right? Okay, so call the question on the original of the recommendation as amended, please. Okay, any opposed? Councillor Jordison. Okay, thank you very much. Motion passes. At this point in time, I'm going to take a 5-minute break, health break, and we'll re-adjourn in 5 minutes, please, and we'll get on with 7.5 and into bylaws. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm just going to take us out of recess and reconvene the meeting. And we'll start with 7.5 and I'll turn it over to Mr. Johnson, CEO, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This is a request for a public hearing for the ALR partial exclusion for Colwood Creek Park. The recommendation is that council direct staff to schedule a public hearing before submitting an application to the Agricultural Land Commission for the partial exclusion of Colwood Creek Park from the Agricultural Land Reserve. Council will recall this was something that came up earlier last year. This is the application as it traverses the Agricultural Land Reserve, and the commission to make our application move forward requires the public hearing.
Thank you very much. Do you have anything else to add to that, Kelsea? Okay, that's perfect. Open it up for questions. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions. In the interest of expediency, I was going to move that we move the staff recommendation. I don't.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson, you second. Okay. Done. Everybody's finished. Do you want to speak to still, Councillor Wilson? Okay, all discussion, not seeing any. I will call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous. Okay, we get on to section 8.1. Tax rate bylaw 2113-2026 adoption. Turn that over to you, Mr. Johnson, again, please. Want to introduce the speaker?
This is the tax rate bylaw number 2113-2026 for adoption.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a mover? Thank you. Councillor Grove and Councillor Jordison seconds. Discussion. Seeing none, any opposed? Okay, it's Councillor Day opposes, and the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to 8.2. Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right on. Thank you. I will wait.
This is Colwood Land Use Bylaw number 151, 1989, amendment number 217, North Latoria Corridor Zone, 532, 538, and 542 Latoria Road for third reading only.
Okay, thank you. Desiree, I understand someone wants to present something, some questions that we had from last time. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can just give a quick introduction to the item as well. As council recalls, on March 9th, a motion was passed to work with the applicant to revise the proposal to mitigate impacts to the adjacent properties to the north. So this presentation is to present the revised proposal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council, staff, and the public for having us this evening. My name is Rachel Sansom, representing the owners of these Latoria properties. I'd just like to start off a little bit with a tiny bit of history on this one. We've actually been here at Colwood working on this file since 2021. And originally it actually was a 6-story proposal, which was permitted at the OCP at that time with the dedication of the 30-meter setback from Latoria that we're seeing today. But as the sort of area grew with additional interest, we sort of got wrapped up in the overall OCP amendment that was finally adopted in the fall of last year. But that OCP amendment came after a great deal of work and studies and road networks, tree preservation, traffic studies, with council, the public, and of course staff with their great support. If you recall, 2 summers ago, we had the pop-ups as well as an ultimate barbecue where people could come and discuss the future of these Latoria properties, not just these, but those all the way to Veterans Memorial Parkway. And we did get the OCP adopted last year. We were then able to come to the planning committee last fall and again paused so that the North Latoria zone could actually be created. So the project that we presented to you for the first 3 readings back in March complied with that zone. We're not requesting any variances at that time. However, we did agree to come back with some modifications to one of the buildings in order to address concerns of the neighbor. So we will just present what changes we did make and explain that if we may. Thank you.
So again, fully compliant with the official community plan and our brand new North Ontario zone bylaw. And I will say a brief thing about the 6-story buildings. 4-story buildings essentially cost the same because the roof and infrastructure is quite expensive. So adding those 2 extra stories does actually help pay for the multifamily. We're all aware that the cost of construction is increasing exponentially by the day. So we are looking for efficiencies as well as housing as many people as we can in a compact and sustainable fashion. So this building one that we're discussing today is probably going to be the last one to be built on this site, anywhere from 6 to 8 years from now, depending on the market. And it'll also be subject to a development permit for form and character. So you will be able to see this again and make further commentary on how it sits on the property and what it will look like. So that is the building in question. It sits on, I think it's 538 Latoria. Is set back. As you can see, on the left-hand side of that slide, we do have that 30-meter natural area that we are dedicating to the city in order to provide not only creek alignment, but future road widening as necessary. So on the left-hand side, you can see what the bylaw required. And what we came forward with in March was that compliant 45-degree angle from the property line to the top of the building. You should note, though, that this building is actually sunk into the ground from the property line about 2 stories, and that is in order to meet a contiguous parkade with those buildings on the lower side of the property, as well as Besanton Road, which will come in and service both this and the property to the west. We did set the building back at 15 meters. The zone requires 10. So our solution to reduce the impact was to remove half of the 6th floor. So what that does effectively is remove any upper windows facing to the north, our neighbors to the north, and it reduces that 45-degree angle to 35 degrees. So we've improved on the zone requirement by 10 full degrees, and we're also committed to that 15-meter setback as opposed to the 10 required by bylaw. So it's almost 30 meters between buildings. That's 100 feet. And exposed at the property line, you'll see just over 3 1/4 stories. So it's not the full 6-story height that can be seen. We also will agree to, at development permit, robust and effective landscaping. The way that the lot sets up is we could actually install that landscaping prior to construction, so it has time to mature and screen the neighbors before the building is there and occupied. So by comparison, in the March meeting, it was noted that a townhouse could also be built here. A townhouse would likely be at grade because you wouldn't need to build the parking structures and the infrastructure and do all that earthwork. So it would actually sit higher on the property. And at 10 meters back, it also meets that 45% angle. So visually, it's almost the same. And in this slide, we kind of melded the two so you could see the effects of a townhouse versus our building setback. And with that half story removed, the 35-degree angle. So we had a rendering done of the proposed building. Of course, this is not the ultimate form and character. Of course, that's subject to a DP, but it does show the 30-meter between buildings, the setback, and potential robust landscaping in this area. And again, this is looking sort of to the east with the same effect. And we're here for your questions, if any. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Questions from council, please. Councilor Jensen.
Thank you, Worship. And some of this might come your way, Rachel. Thank you. I did make a note of that. The 30 meters between buildings, that's significant. And that I don't think that should be understated, because I've sat here and approved setbacks that are just a few meters between large buildings and homes, and it is difficult. So I appreciate that. Thank you. There's a mention in the letter of rationale about a play park. Is this a public amenity, Rachel?
Again, that could be subject to the development permit. I believe we have room. It might need to go within the 30-meter dedicated area. And working with staff to provide that amenity. A play park, I think we agree, is necessary for either the residents or public. So we'd be certainly happy to work with staff on how that would look and where it would go.
Was there, help me out, the overall design, I mean, I know it's not as granular yet, but was there, trails anticipated through the property? I'm trying to remember from the initial concepts.
Yeah, I understand that the development permit guidelines do require pedestrian connectivity, not only on the private property, but for the public. So there would be reciprocal easements so that the residents of these 4 buildings could circulate and visit one another, although the maintenance would be the responsibility of the individual buildings. But of course, there's also the notion of the larger multi-purpose trail that would run parallel to Latoria with those eventual improvements.
Thank you. And the infrastructure upgrades, I mean, I think you heard from some folks express some concerns. You know, I think we've done our part on Latoria Road with the big roundabout that seemed to take forever, but you've heard concerns about Wishart Road and about Byzantin, and you know, maybe someone can fill us in on what the time frame would be. I mean, I'd hate to think it comes at the end of the development. Hopefully it can be delivered early.
I believe, if I may, through the chair, that we agreed to do the Byzantin intersection early in the process as far as getting that ductwork in and getting those lights. It might be a little bit of a cart and horse situation with the eventual cross section for Latoria, but ideally we would provide the ductwork and the signalization for the ultimate build out, working with, of course, engineering staff. And I understand that our development cost charges as well would go towards that Latoria, and of course I'll let the engineer discuss the Wishart and Latoria intersection, but I understood that might be a DCC project as well.
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Jensen. Yes, the Wishart Latoria is the DCC project for the traffic signals there. We currently, I can't recall off the top, I think I want to say it's fairly soon. Certainly, I would think it would be in well before these buildings would be actualized. And certainly, staff is planning in 2027 to bring back the DCC road bylaw. And at that time, part of the project development will be the timing of those projects. So council certainly could push that project to the top of that list.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. And one last one, Ms. Sansom. You mentioned the landscape screening. And again, I think that's a big deal as far as having some respect for the existing homes in the neighborhood. And I guess a question for staff. I don't like leaving an item like that just to, you know, discussion with staff members. Can that be embedded within the development permitting process or with an actual timeline?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So if there are any components of the applicant's proposal that you're seeing this evening, I would recommend to council to direct staff to embed those within the development agreement so that they are secured. A lot of these components that they are discussing this evening are beyond what is within the zone and the North Latoria area plan. And so you can direct us to integrate that into the development agreement so that is secured for whenever they actually develop.
Thank you. I mean, I think I'll do that when it comes time, Your Worship, and thank you, staff, and I'll yield. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, you may want to send a reminder to council to give that feedback. So it is important because a lot of my questions that I actually had are actually all development agreement related, so nothing to do with what we're approving tonight. So, Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I too have thinking of commenting on the very same point, the development agreement issues. The landscaping which we're talking looks fairly significant and beyond a few small trees that are going to be big in 20 years, but rather something more mature to help with blocking the view of the building, which doesn't include the fact that the view of beyond the building is certainly gone.
But I appreciate the effort the opponent has made to develop a solution as kind of put forward in the last meeting. So the question I would ask, oh, it was about the 30-meter setback. The creek runs through there, does it not? Latoya Creek, or is it already crossed the road by then?
If I may, through the chair, the Cherry Creek along the Latoria Road, actually, from the eastern edge of the property, it's at Latoria Road, and then there's actually a little white house that it goes behind, and then it jumps outside of the 30-meter setback. So riparian setbacks will apply to that outside of the 30. So we not only have the 30-meter boundary, but we will also have another riparian setback where the creek actually jumps out of the 30 a little bit, and then it swings back down towards Latoria as it heads west.
Thank you. I think that answers my question. Thank
you. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question. I'm not sure if Rachel will be able to answer it, but let's put it out there. If the south property line next to the land transferred to the city, if that land is transferred as highway dedication, then the required setback is also reduced to 3 meters. So I'm not sure why any exception has been included for the south property line. Like, does anyone know at the time of rezoning what the future intended use of the land on the south property line will be used for?
If I may, again, through the mayor, we respect that as a property line. So that will be our front lot line to Latoria, and the setbacks would apply to the dedication, whether it's road or park or what have you, that would be per the zone.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question here. I know when they put the big the proposal for the development in Olympic View, they did this thing called a shadow study. I don't know what that is. Well, it's basically they look at what the shadows are going to cast. I was just reading, and some people said that was an issue, but it looks like with 100 feet. Wow, I don't think you have an issue there. But is there a plan to do that? They do it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did actually do that study. Staff have that, and we did show it, I believe, at Planning and Land Use Committee as well as the meeting for the 3 readings. And yes, in December, it does the sun is lower in the sky, and there are shadows cast on adjacent properties, but that is the only time of year.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. So looking to council for recommendation, please. Okay, thank you. Councilor Wilson moves it. Seconder, please. Okay, Councilor Ward. Discussion. Councilor Jensen.
As mentioned, I do want to seek an amendment, and that is for the addition of the publicly accessible play place to be determined or to the satisfaction of staff, and also the proposed landscaping screen to be at the earliest opportunity in the development. I'd look to staff for some direction on wording to make sure I'm not going to muddle things up, but
Mari, is that a DP thing, or is that now?
So the landscaping and screening at the rear of the lot is not a requirement. And so if you would like to see that, then we can integrate that into the development agreement. A play space structure, if that's what you're referring to, is also not a requirement by bylaw.
right. So we want to add that. Thank you. So are you comfortable with the wordings that I provided there? And I apologize, Marcy, I'm freewheeling it here.
If we could just add the proposed landscaping screen at the north end of the property.
And what about a timeline? Do we need to attach a timeline, or can I leave that with staff? Or
We will place that within the appropriate trigger, which will likely be at time of development permit. They'll have to demonstrate that they've met these requirements.
The point is, we want those shrubs to grow significantly, not planted 3 weeks before construction started, right?
So yeah, development permit, we could, because it does require an environmental development permit, we could request the planting of the landscaping at that time. The play structure would likely just occur at occupancy essentially, but we would check for it at development permit. But yeah, the landscaping, it could be like a restoration essentially, which can be required at development permit.
Thank you. That's my amendment. Thank you, Worship.
Okay, can I get a seconder for the amendment, please? Okay, thank you very much, Councilor Olson. Okay, further discussion on the amendment. Sorry, Councilor Jordison, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I have discussion on all of it.
This
Bas-
is discussion on the amendment right now.
Will there be an opportunity to discuss?
Yes,
that?
yeah.
Okay, I'll just wait.
Okay, seeing no other, just on the amendment, I will, is there any opposed to the amendment? Okay, Councilor Jordison opposes. Okay, that part of the motion, the amendment passes. So we'll go back to the original motion as amended. Discussion. Councilor Jordison, now you can speak on it.
Thank you. So I just want to remind everybody that on October 14th, 2025, a motion was made by council that staff would develop a gentle infill strategy for the official community plan for existing neighborhoods. And then on February 9th, 2026, the planning department brought forward its proposed new policy projects for 2026. And council had the opportunity at that time to prioritize alternative projects. However, I don't believe it was fully appreciated that the gentle infill strategy that it hadn't been treated. I don't believe it was treated with the proper urgency that it deserves, and I think it was something that we missed. So the gentle infill strategy should have been prioritized, in my view, in following council's October 25th direction, or sorry, October 2025 direction. And as further issues become apparent, these matters should have been advanced regardless of competing priorities. And I feel that we owe it to the existing neighbors that came forward early in the process to discuss their concerns, that we should we should have made this a priority. So it's not a reflection of the merits of the particular development. My concern is that work council committed to undertaking for this neighborhood has not been realized and other existing neighborhoods. We can't continue approving developments in existing neighborhoods without fully considering the impacts on the residents who already live there. What message does that send to the community?
Please.
That we will make commitments, pass motions, and then move ahead with more development before doing the work we said was necessary. The residents in this neighborhood came forward, raised legitimate concerns, and were told the city would address them. And I believe we need to honor that commitment before permitting further development in the area. And furthermore to that, I appreciate the work that's been gone into this application. But the concerns raised are not simply just about this specific project, but about the broader zoning framework council is being asked to approve for future applications along the North Latoria corridor. The submission highlights concerns about insufficient setbacks and transitions between higher density development and existing neighborhoods, particularly where the 3-story buildings could be placed much closer to neighboring properties than expected. And there are also unresolved transportation infrastructure concerns, including the adequacy of the proposed Bazanton Way extension, the road width, the traffic circulation, active transportation infrastructure, and long-term park access planning. Given the scale of the development proposed in this corridor, I do not believe these issues should be addressed later through individual agreements or future discussions. They should be resolved before
approval so that council and residents clearly understand the long-term impacts of the zoning and infrastructure decisions being made today. For those reasons, I will not be supporting the application as presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there discussion? No, this is on, we already approved the amendment. This is the original motion as amended. Okay, Councillor Ward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been going on a long time. North Latoria, the concept of developing there emerged, I believe in 2021, prior to my term on council, and has taken up a lot of time, you know, throughout this term. And I think there's a balance of there's truth on both sort of perspectives. You know, I understand the resident point of view. I've been there. I think that when your comfort in your home, you know, feels under threat, it's an emotional thing. It's a challenge. It's you know, it's heated. You know, it becomes very personal. On the flip side, I think developers, they're often, you know, in the heat of the emotion, and they get sort of thrown under the bus, if you will, for being all about profit and so forth. And they are a for-profit business. I mean, I work in the private sector. I get it. I bet you many in this room do as well, aside from staff. If you work in a private sector business, you have to make profit. You have to show a return on your investment. So I don't view them as opponents or the enemy, nor do I view, you know, residents as being in the wrong or, you know, holding back progress or anything like that. I think the cooler heads need to prevail, and we need to find middle ground. I think there's been good points made by everybody, and it's important, I think, to clarify maybe some misinformation. I think that, you know, oftentimes I've seen it now enough that you get to this stage of development when people emerge and say, well, we weren't aware, we didn't know. I mean, we have made a lion's share of effort to communicate what's going on with North Latoria for years now. And I would actually, through the chair, I would ask staff maybe to clarify what has happened in terms of communication for this project in North Latoria, in terms of communicating to residents.
Yep. Mari, can you answer that question, or Desiree?
Yeah, thank you very much. We have provided a summary of communication and engagement that has taken place as part of the development of the North Latoria area plan, as well as communication and engagement that has been a part of this particular rezoning application. There have been a number of community events that we have piggybacked on. So we've displayed open house boards at Music in the Parks and Eats and Beats events. We've held special events for this project specifically. So we've had a number of open houses. We had the pop-up at Red Barn. We had a Latoria Street party as well. There was a survey that was conducted, and then quite a few promotions or notifications. So that's been postcards that have been sent out by the city, as well as some communication that have been sent out by the applicant as well. There's been newspaper ads, there's been social media posts. The Let's Talk Colwood page was updated throughout the development of the North Latoria area plan. So yeah, you can see that summary before you.
Great, thank you. And I think that's important to clarify, because I personally very much believe in transparency and communication. And, you know, I was there at a couple of these events, you know, flipping burgers across the road on Latoria, chatting with residents. And I know many in council were here when we had visioning boards out front, you know, chatting with people, and some of the property owners were there talking about it. So I think I'm compelled to defend city staff to say, okay, and council to say we've made every effort possible to communicate what's happening. Now, I'm sorry,
you can't interfere with the business of this.
The plans do evolve, but even going back to 2024, I'll indirectly answer a comment that was made that it does show the buildings lined up going back to late 2024 into 2025 where they're cited today. So that being said, the last time this came forward, I shared the concerns of some of the residents in the area that building one in particular was a little imposing. And I believe if I didn't make the motion, I certainly made the comment that I wanted to ideally see a reduction in height of building one. I believe that 6-story buildings have a place on this property. The way it slopes down allows for it to be far less intrusive than almost anywhere else in the community, with maybe 1 or 2 notable exceptions. But the building at the back where it abuts against the properties is a challenge. And I think credit to the applicants, they've made an honest effort to hear those comments and reduce it within what they feel is acceptable to them. Would I have preferred to see more? I'll be honest, yes, I was hoping for 4.5 stories, if you will. So the exact thing you see today with one piece of the floor removed, but starting with 4 and then having half of 5. So I'm a little on the fence still. I'm challenged by where we're at because I am elected by residents to be their voice. But I also know that we have business to do and we need to move forward, and the developers are acting in good faith. And, this has taken a long time to get here. So I understand when I look into here, there is one section where it identifies conditions. And now I've lost my place on it. Perhaps staff might be able to assist on that, but there is a paragraph on conditions that identify some of the things I guess what we're looking to do is lock down to ensure that what happens is still in place. When we say 6 to 8 years to build building one, that all those criteria that you see today happen. Because my other fear, of course, is we approve something and 6 years from now, something entirely different happens and everyone feels misled. So I appreciated the note that those were conditions in there, but I was looking to make an amendment to add in something about a good faith discussion with the developer, at a 5 or 6 year point, to talk about the feasibility and the financial viability of reducing that building in height. And I can't predict the future, but I wonder what other conditions might exist or what council of the day might be able to do to make it whole in some sense with the developer to find a middle ground. Obviously in the interim, forge ahead with buildings, 2 and 3, and then see where we net out. So that's my thought process. I don't have a motion immediately, but maybe through the chair to staff, I wonder if there's language we can use. I understand it's non-binding, so it's not the guarantee that the residents are looking for, but just that a good faith discussion will be included with those conditions that down the road that can be explored.
So as I mentioned, the components of the proposal that the applicant has brought forward, we can certainly integrate those within the development agreement. They did show plans with a larger rear yard setback than what is within the zone as well. So that might be something that council wants to consider. As we've discussed, this is a rezoning application. So this is to permit the regulations that we are putting forward as part of the NLC zone. This is not securing these plans. So they can develop a development that fits these regulations, but it could be different than what is shown to you this evening because we do not have that concurrent DP and rezoning process right now. So that is just something for council to keep in mind, that we are not sure of the timing of their development, and we could certainly seek clarification from the applicant. I would also add that prior to the adoption of this rezoning application, there are significant requirements that they will need to do between third reading and adoption, which includes the dedication of Byzantine Way, the transfer of that 30-meter parcel to the city, as well as securing an SRW over the lands for servicing. So those are pretty significant requirements that they will have to do before adoption. The Byzantine Way extension also includes having to get sign off from the adjacent parcel owner. So I just wanted to make that clear to council that I would say these requirements prior to adoption are much more onerous than our usual requirements that we have for rezoning applications. Typically, it's just registering the development agreement and sometimes maybe some road dedication like along Souk Road, but these are quite more significant, I would say.
So, through the chair to you, Mari, just if I'm understanding it correctly, following third reading, there's one more opportunity to review what may or may not happen on this property. Because I think what my concern is, and you alluded to it, or you directly referenced it, is that we don't have this concurrent DVP and rezoning process in place right now, and yet we've seen it, have a negative impact on us in the past, where we've been led to believe by design work and such that we were approving project X, and the build form ends up being project Y, and the community says that's not what we wanted. And we say, well, that's not what we saw either. And I'll be frank about it. I very much do not want to impede the progress of this project. I think the proponents have come forward with all the best intentions, but this is a bigger issue. It's a city issue. It could be any applicant before us right now, that until we have that process in place, we're going to continue to run up against this. I can't in good faith tell residents of the community that what you're going to see is this, knowing that that's just not true. And I think that just doesn't sit well with me. And anyone who knows me knows I'm not anti-development. I'm very much in favor of sustainable development in our community and growing our community. But we have to be able to commit to something with confidence and tell people that what you saw is what you're going to get. And we haven't been able to do that for 3 years now, and it frustrates the heck out of me. So I don't know where that leaves me at the moment, but I don't see a way we can resolve that this evening.
Another thing, if I could add, this development permit will likely go to council. It will go to council. So, so council will be able to provide comment on the form and character development permit application. So, at that time, you could make recommendations to amend the application to better align with the design guidelines within our OCP. If you feel that when they submit the development permit, it does not align, and that does include infill policies to recognize the impact to adjacent properties. We do have design guidelines for that. So.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr.
Oh,
Mayor.
sorry.
No, please go ahead.
This is the uncomfortability of what we have right now being in between, where we've got the regulation that will be coming forward, that in the future rezonings aren't going to be coming forward without the development permit to give surety about what the form and character looks like. The commitment that council can make to the neighborhood is that you will see this form and character, and so will the neighborhood when the development permit application comes forward. So if it doesn't meet the public's expectation, doesn't meet council's expectation, and it doesn't meet the form and character guidelines, likely council won't be approving that. Moving forward, we will be having rezoning applications with DPs so that you can have surety and understand that it will be 2 years that they have to commence construction. Not what we see right now where it gets rezoned, sits in perpetuity. Council made a comment earlier that some of these developments have been in place for a number of years and haven't moved forward. And of course, properties change, people have different expectations. But what the public can be assured of is the form and character will meet council's expectations and will have a public forum and format. So they will no longer be approved through staff. These will be coming forward to council to make sure that that public accountability piece is there for what the development will look like. So all of these conditions that are in the development agreement, when the rubber hits the road, what does that actually look like? What do the details of the plans look like? It's nice to put up drawings today, but those drawings today likely aren't going to be what's submitted with the building permit application and the DP. Having said all of that, we understand what council is trying to do here, and putting those components within the development agreement gives you one more lever to make sure that the development meets the expectations for this council and for future councils based on what that public feedback has been.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Any other discussion on the main motion as amended? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Counselor Jordison. The motion carries, so it's gone through third reading. Okay, we'll move on to, we'll get to Counselor. Get Counselor Day back, please. Oh, she left?
Yeah, she said she.
Okay, yeah, this is a nothing anyway. Sewer bylaw, could you read the motion, please? Thank you.
Yes, it's sewer local area service enlargement amendment bylaws, all going for adoption. Colwood Main sewer local area service establishment and loan authorization bylaw for 569 Carindale Road. Colwood West sewer local area service establishment and loan authorization bylaw for 569 Carindale Road. Colwood Main local area service establishment loan authorization bylaw for 2086 Sioux Road, Building A, and Colwood Main sewer local area service establishment and loan authorization bylaw, LAS enlargement for 2086 Sioux Road, Building B.
Thank you very much. Mover seconder, please. Thank you. Counselor Jordison, Counselor Grove. Discussion. Any opposed? Motion carries. And at this point in time, could I get a mover and seconder to close the open meeting per section 90-1, 91-1 of the community charter as detailed in the recommendation? Okay, thank you, Counselor Jensen, Counselor Grove. Discussion. Seeing none, call for question. Any opposed? And I'll wait for everyone to leave.